Hey, everybody, welcome to the Central Texas Football Podcast. I'm Kenny Heath, your host, coming to you from our worldwide headquarters in Huron, Texas. Today, I got the editor of Texas, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Mr. Greg Tepper. Greg, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing excellent. It's a wonderful time of year. It's getting a little cold outside, which means that the football means a little bit more these time of year. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, hey, we appreciate you joining us. Kind of short notice. I want to thank L4 Media for putting on this podcast, and Ranch Masters, who's our sponsor. So thank you to those guys. All right, let's get started. So you've probably already done all your podcasts and your predictions. So this won't air till tomorrow sometime. So we're not going to give anything away. Let's start in 4AD1. We got Stephenville and Canyon West Plains. They're going to be playing that one Friday, 7 p.m. at Grande Stadium in Midland. Uh, Man, Stephenville, we know about their offense with Gafford and Gentry and Wilkerson. But if you look at their defense, the last 5 games, they've only really given up 21 points total. So the defense is coming along. They got a junior defensive tackle in Colton Dirth, 32 and a half tackles for losses. The dude's a monster. Another kid named, I think, Bierman or Spearman is doing really well. Canyon West, they can score some points. Their quarterback's throwing for 3,000 yards. They got a really good sophomore running back in Slade Russell. What's your feeling on this game?
Yeah, it's a fascinating ball game. And what I love about games like this when you get to deep in the playoffs is that you get great storylines and great contrasts of what these programs are like. For example, you've got Stephenville, which is one of the most decorated, like iconic programs in Texas high school football. I mean, they got all those stars on that yellow jacket, right? And then you've got Canyon West Plains, who is, I think, in their third varsity season, a new program there in the greater Amarillo area that has suddenly caught fire. And here they are, each of which 48 minutes away from playing in the state semifinal. It's fascinating. Obviously, I think center stage here is the quarterback matchup, Ryan Gafford against Reed Macon. These two guys are box office, and that to me is going to be worth the price of admission. But I think the difference in this ball game and why I like Stephenville is because of what they're able to do on the defensive side. Because I think you hit the nail on the head. Their defense feels like they're playing their best football right now. They've been touched up before, right? La Vega touched them up. Lampasas got theirs on them. Ruston, Louisiana, which is I think one of the very best teams in Louisiana, got to them. And so they can be touched up, but I'm a big believer in what have you done for me lately? And right now that Stephenville defense feels like they're playing pretty well. It's going to be up, I think, to West Plains to find a way to kind of keep this game, to come up, kind of go stop for stop with them. And I'm not quite sure they can do it. I like Stephenville. I think the pedigree kind of wins out in this one. And they move on to the regional final or to the state semifinal rather.
Yeah, I agree. I like Stephenville in this one. The next game, Alvarado, Salina, Friday, 7:30 in Grapevine is one of. So we've got 9 games that we're going to cover. This is one of 2 that I'm just don't feel good about our Central Texas teams. Even though, man, Cartier Collier, what can't that guy do? Almost 3,500 yards passing, 41 yards passing, or 41 touchdowns passing, 1,400 yards rushing, 31 touchdowns. You got DeMarcus Belton, that's crazy good. Also, he's a junior. A couple of good wide receivers in Sansman and Bjork. I don't know a whole lot about Salina. There's not a whole lot on match preps. I know they're really good, and I know they're undefeated, and they've made some really good teams look bad. Alvarado's loaded. I mean, do you think this is probably the best? I mean, obviously it's the regional finals, but the best team that Salina saw all year.
It's interesting because Salina's run through a really tough non-district schedule. They played Gunner, they played they played a number of really, really good ball clubs, but they came out on top of those. I will say that I think this is the best offense they've faced, certainly, because Alvarado, Matt Stepp and I do our podcast Tep and Step on TexasFootball.com, and we called this the Tep and Step cut the brakes game of the week, because if you like points, if you like scoring and getting up and down, I think this is the game for you. Another great quarterback. You mentioned Cartier Collier. He is now up for the Mr. Texas Football Player of the Year, a finalist, one of 10 finalists across the state. He is special, just plain and simple. He's just a special ball player, and he has been everything. One thing I want to keep an eye on: DeMarcus Belton was nicked up in their regional semifinal game. Can he come back healthy? How effective is he? We know he's going to try to go. The thing about Salina They can score. They got a huge offensive line, a couple of great running backs like Logan Gutierrez. And then they've got a quarterback in Bo Bentley, who I think can really light it up as well. I think this is going to be a high scoring affair. Salina's defense, I think, is superior here, and I think that they have played. They've I don't know if they played a single playmaker like Cartier Collier. They have played high-powered offenses, and they've kind of outscored them when they've needed to. Last week was kind of interesting. They played Aubrey in a district rematch, and they took like a 38-7 lead at halftime, and then like someone figured something out on Aubrey side and ended up closing that thing to a 14-point game. Ended up being like, I think 63-49 was the final. Cartier Collier's better than any player on Aubrey. So I am fairly certain he's going to get his. I am not quite sure Alvarado is going to be able to slow down Salina enough, which is probably why I lean towards the Bobcats.
Yep, I agree with you there. Okay, let's go La Vega, Sealy Friday at the P Field in Pflugerville. Man, we talk about La Vega a lot, and I just think of the elder statesman of Central Texas football, and Bryson Rowland, who's been rushing, been doing great since he's a freshman. Now, the Courtney Parr kind of settled in at quarterback for those guys. Thornton's a really good wide receiver. They got a good defense. It's kind of coming along. Warren Richardson's doing well for them. Sealy, man, I didn't know about this guy, but Kane Kilo, really good quarterback over there. They upset, I can upset Robinson, in the first round, I believe, or second round, and then knocked off La Vega's district mate Gainesville last week. I feel good about La Vega winning this game. What say you?
I like La Vega. This is Sealy's got a little team of destiny in him. This is a team that I don't think was expected to be here, kind of in a weird, wild region too. But I think that obviously what they've been able to do with Kilo has been awfully impressive. Region 3, I should say. It's been very, very impressive. To me, when I think of La Vega football under Don Hyde, I think physical.
Mm-hmm.
I think like they want to go out there and knock your block off. And to me, especially when you get to December football, the team that is most physical, I think, has the edge. That in this game, I think, is La Vega. I think they are the more physical team. They're better in the trenches, and I think they're playing with a lot of confidence. That is a defense I think is playing very well right now, and I think that this is La Vega's time. I think that I like La Vega in this one. Can they contain Kilo? That's the real question in this one. But I think that they are. I think they're a slight favorite to win this one in this one in what should be a real whale of a ball game. I'm interested again to see what this Sealy defense has up against this La Vega attack, because we know La Vega is going to go out there. We know what their game plan is, which is we're just going to go out there and flat out mash you.
Yeah. All right, I like La Vega also. So let's go Malakoff, Liberty Isla. What a great job Coach Willer's done over there. I mean, I think it's kind of not a stroke of luck, but just the stars kind of line dropping down to 3AD1. He got that job Friday, 7 p.m. in Tyler. Man, it's just really hard to pick against Malakoff to me. I've watched him a lot. Mike Jones is doing what he does. And now you got Tennyson's healthy, Jerry and Hall's healthy. You got both of them in the backfield. Poteet really good on defense and is really good on offense also. And all those guys are going to play a little bit of defense too. And then if you look at Liberty Islo, Trip Basinger, his stats are crazy. Over 3,000 yards passing, 44 touchdowns, 1,000 yards rushing, and 16. And he's got help with Arian Taylor and Daquan Prevost. That's kind of I've seen what a Brad Willard team can do up close and personal several times, and I really like him. But I just think Malakoff probably has this one. What do you think?
It's hard to go against championship pedigree, and it's also hard to pick against the state's longest winning streak, right? Malakoff's won 29 in a row, and it hasn't always been pretty, right? They have not always gone out there and dominated, but I think that what you have seen is a team that, as you mentioned, is healthy right now. Mike Jones is playing exceptionally well. They are back to that. Jason Tennyson, who I know missed all of last year, essentially is back and feels like he's playing with like a new kind of lease on his career, which is interesting. I will say though that I think this Liberty Ilo team provides a really interesting challenge because of what they're doing at quarterback and Trip Basinger. He's unbelievable. In the last week, He put up something like 550 yards of total offense and 8 touchdowns, and then had like 10 tackles for fun. Like he's a monster out there. And we know that they're going to be able to dial some stuff up. My concern long term, and I've said this for a couple since about midseason about Malakoff, I do not know if they are as deep as they were last year, and that is going to be the kind of thing that is really important for them to stay healthy. I think more than it was last year. Obviously, they had such great players and leading to a state championship is really critical that they're healthy. The fact that they're healthy right now, I think, bodes well for them. I am picking against a 29 game winning streak. I like Malakoff. But this is a really interesting challenge, especially with an offense that is hitting on all cylinders right now in Liberty Ilo, and now the last chance for Texarkana out there in Far East Texas.
Yeah, I like Malakoff. That's going to be a great one. And this next one, Franklin, Columbus, Friday, 7 o'clock in Cedar Park at Gumpton Stadium. I think Franklin's starting to Franklin. I've heard other people say that, but it's just deep waters, 3 or 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. A lot of people thought that Diebold game was just a little too close. Last week, they took care of business going up against a 12-1 Columbus team with big name power. Franklin's got Jaden Jackson. If you go to their Max Prep page, that is the only person that has any stats on Franklin. It's just one guy, Jaden Jackson. Then you got Shovel and Rigdon and another Shovel at Columbus. This ought to be a great one. I'd like to go down to Cedar Park and watch it. What do you think?
Yeah, this is I'm tempted to say that the winner of this game is my favorite to win the 3AD1 title. Columbus has looked the part all year long. Quarterback Adam Schobel is a Mr. Texas football finalist. He's box office. Grayson Rigdon left their game last week with an injury. We don't know what his status is moving forward, but they've got weaponry and a huge offensive line. And then you mentioned the defense that has been playing pretty well as well. I think Franklin is like the quietest team that's played in 4 straight state championship games, maybe in Texas high school football history. Like, this is a team that is essentially 2 touchdowns away from winning 4 consecutive state titles. But they lost 2 games early, and one of them was to, I believe, Salina, and the other one was to like Houston Spring Legacy School of Sports and Sciences,
Yep.
which is kind of like an all-star team down there in the Houston area. And I think people kind of said, oh, well, that's it for Franklin. But I think you mentioned it. The deeper it gets in the playoffs, the better they get. And they are doing that Franklin thing again, where they are gashing people with the slot tee with Jaden Jackson and his brother Bubba Jackson. You got a running back named Bubba. I kind of trust you implicitly. And then that defense is playing great. Mark Fannin does an unbelievable job. A huge game. I like Columbus. I think that what we've seen from the offense and the weaponry they've gotten might be a little bit too much. But at the same time, Franklin, this is their time. This is when they shine. This is a coin flip game. I love it. This might be my game of the week. I think this is a fantastic game. I like Columbus in a close one. I've ridden with them since the beginning of the playoffs. I ain't gonna hop off the bandwagon right now. But this is a colossal matchup in 3A Division 1.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Franklin. I just kind of got a feeling that it's hard to pick it, like you said, against a team that's been
nothing wrong with that. Listen, that is I tell you if you're crazy. That ain't crazy at all.
Let's go Lexington, 12-1, Tidehaven. Where are they at? I forgot to write that down. They're
12-2. You got 2 losses.
Yeah.
I think so, or 11-2 maybe.
Yeah. So you Tidehaven, back in the thick of it after being in the state championship game last year, lost a few dudes from last year. Lexington junior quarterback Case Evans, really good quarterback, 2,800 yards, 36 touchdowns. They got their running back, Noah Wright Harris, has stepped up with almost 1,500 yards and 20 TDs. They got a great group of receivers. They can play defense sometimes, when they have to. I like Lexington in this one. Tidehaven's really good. I watched some film on them. They got another big running back. The quarterback can sling it a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Lexington, but because part of it is that, well, you're scoring 50 points a game. Seems good. Like, do that. Like, if you can run the 50 points a game play, I recommend it. And Case Evans is awesome. And the defense playing well. Their one loss on the year, I have this up. Their one loss on the year, they lost back in district play to Blanco, and kind of a real head scratcher. They were huge favorites in that game, and just couldn't put it together. Tidehaven is what's interesting about this is that in Region 4, like none of the teams that we thought were going to be here are here. We thought that East Bernard, Poth, those types of things were going to be here. And instead, Tidehaven has weathered the storm and found their way through. And then Lexington has found their way through as well. I like Lexington. Tidehaven, though, again, you're talking about a coach in David Lucio who knows how to win this time of year. They are dangerous, and especially considering, you look back the past couple of weeks, they've played really well. They're coming off of that really impressive, they're coming off of a really impressive win last week against Van Vleck, kind of a Cinderella story. I do think they've got the single most impressive victory because they've got that win over East Bernard in week 11. I do think, though, that I think that Lexington's offense is a little bit too much, and I think that's probably the difference in this one. I like Lexington in a close one, but again, Tidehaven's got that pedigree of the past couple of years that they're not out of any ball game.
Yeah, I like Lexington. All right, so I've been waiting on this game all year. We talked to Step. We do a question of the week. 2A Division I, Region 2 was just a toss-up. It was kind of crazy because they separated the Waco area schools. Sent Marlin to 4, and then Axtell and some other guys. So you got Axtell at 12-1, Hamilton at 13-0. Friday at 7:00 in Belton. Hamilton, there's not a whole lot of pub on. They finally cracked the top 10 later after that. I think they beat DeLeon late in the season. I kind of had my eye on them because I talked to Craig Horn early in the year, and he said it. Hamilton's the best 2A team we've seen in our region on film this year. So they're really good. One thing about Axtell, they lost Levi Leathers early. AJ Fretch came in, did a good job. He kind of, I don't know if he got benched. I think he got dinged up, and then Colin Horn came in and played quarterback. I just don't know if they're a better team with Colin. He rushed for almost 300 yards against Coleman. Last week he had 100 yards receiving, 100 yards rushing. He's a really good football player. Leathers is back. He played a little bit last week. You still got playmakers with Horn and Tyson Michelle and Troy Arlett. I just really think this game, if it's a low-scoring game, kind of defensive battle, I think it's probably going to be Hamilton. I think if it turns into a race, it's Axtell.
So this is a week that has North Shore Tascasita, right? It has Allen and North Crowley, it has Denton Ryan and Aledo, Port Nature's Grove, South Oak Cliff. Huge games. This is my favorite game of the week. I love this game. Axtell and Hamilton is like, it's my sicko game of the week. Like, because to me, 2A, you hit the nail on the head. 2A Division I Region 2 has been the mystery box region in all of Texas high school football. Like, nobody knew which way it was going to go. And if you take a look at it, what's interesting about this ball game is you have a team that I don't think it's a surprise is here in Axtell, living up to the hype, just a rock solid team. When I look at Axtell, I'm like, you are solid across the board, solid defense, solid running game, solid quarterback play. Everything's real solid. And then you have Hamilton, who is out of nowhere, a 13-0, by far their best season in program history. They hadn't had a 10-win season in 20 years, and now they're 48 minutes away from a state semifinal at 14-0. It is shocking to me, but it's appropriate for it to come down to this. I like Hamilton. I think Hamilton's going to win the stinking region. And I think a lot of it comes down to that defense. I thought what you saw last week, that 14-7 win over Kearns, was really impressive. That's a good Kearns team, and they really held them in check.
Music Grinnell's a really good football player.
Unbelievable. And they really held them kind of in check the whole game. I like Hamilton in this one. And if you transported me back to August and said, hey, you're going to be picking Hamilton to win Region 2, I'd say, who the heck are you and how'd you get here? Like, this is it is really, but appropriately, a region that was so unpredictable has an unpredictable end.
Yeah. And I can see Hamilton, their Horn will tell you, we're a little bitty, and I weigh more than anybody on the football team. So they're going to, they can get wore down. I think they did that against Italy when they lost that game. So that'll be a good one. I'm glad you like it because I was hoping this would be the regional final. So. All right, let's go. Marlin 10-3 against Ganado 12-1. This is the other game that I really like Marlin. I think Roderick Suitors is starting to come on and play well. This one's Thursday, 7:00 in San Marcos, a rare Thursday game. I'm surprised we didn't have more. Ganado's got they're really good, and they've got a good resume. I think Marlin's playing really well. Roderick Suitors is doing well. D'Angelo Wright's running the ball well. You got two dudes on defense, and Bryson Maxwell Steele and Tyron Bell that are playing well. I just don't know. Ganado with their offense, their quarterback's thrown 42 touchdowns. They've got Logan Burris for 1,000 yards. They've got all kinds of receivers that he throws to. There's 4 of them with over 500 yards. I just don't know that Marlin's defense can contain Ganado. What do you think?
So Ganado was our number 1 team in the state to start the year in 2A Division 1. And you mentioned Bryce Ullman, their quarterback, who's put up crazy numbers. He missed some time with injury, which makes his numbers all the more shocking, what he's done. We thought that this Ganado team was ready for prime time, and last week against Refugio, they proved it. I think both of these teams are coming off signature wins. I thought Marlin, their win over Mason, that's a way under the radar, super impressive result to beat a Mason team that had been steamrolling people. I love what they're doing offensively, but I think your read on it is exactly right. Ganado's defense, I think, is the difference in this ball game, and I think what happened last week, Marlin kind of lured Mason into kind of a shootout and kind of like if you just want to stand back and just throw haymakers at each other, we can, because we can win that ball game. I don't think Ganado is going to get lured into that kind of game. I think their defense is going to make steps, and I think that they're going to make it to the semifinal. I like their ability to come up with stops, and I think Ganado's your small but clear favorite in this ball game.
I agree. All right, let's go. Bremond at 11-2 against Grapeland 10-3, a rematch from earlier in the year. I think Bremond lost by 12. I think. I like, you talked about Bubba Jackson. If you got a guy named Tank Scott on your team that's a running back, I'm going to go for you. They got the young guy at Kowalski, the coach's kid at quarterback's doing well. It's a rematch. It's hard to be a team twice. I like Bremond in this one. What about you?
Yeah, what's so fascinating about this one is, so there are 12 rematches this week in the Texas high school football playoffs. There are only 2 non-district rematches. It's this, and then there's a 6-man rematch. Klondike and Jayton is a rematch from non-district. These two teams met way back in week 2, and so the question for me, whenever you have these types of games, is how much has changed and what has changed. And for me, the biggest difference is that I think you have seen this Bremond offense grow up. That's what I think is the real difference in this ball game from when they met, and it was a 44-32 win for Grapeland. I think that Bremond was a young team. They're still a young team. They're largely comprised of underclassmen. But I think that they've got a ton of underclassmen that have all grown up that are basically older. Guys, Bremond's rolling out a freshman quarterback, okay, in Seth Kasowski. And he has made huge strides, I think. And I think if you talked with his dad, Jeff Kasowski, he'd tell you he's a different ball player right now. I also think that defense has made strides. Grapeland beat them in week 2 rather, largely because of what they were able to do offensively, and specifically what they're able to do early in this ballgame. They kind of jumped out to a lead and made a young Bremond team chase. That is one of the things that I'm keeping an eye on. I think the first quarter of this game is critical. I think if Bremond gets out of that first quarter, it's like 7-7 or 10-7 or something like that, they're in business. They cannot fall behind. I do not think they're built to chase. I think they're built to play from ahead. I like Bremond in this one. I think they get a little bit of revenge in this one, and I think they avenge their loss and win it. I think the way they're playing right now is awfully impressive.
Yeah, I like Bremond too. Fun fact: about mid-year, I did a deep dive in on them. I think it was before the Mark game, and if you look at their roster, there's 4 kids with the last name Scott on that team. So Tank Scott, he's a junior, 2 sophomores, and a freshman. So, and then you got a freshman quarterback. So they may be here for a while.
Yeah.
Next couple of years. All right, let's do some bonus coverage. you're a 6-man guy. I live right down the road from Abbott, and actually I live closer to Blum, who Coach Thornhill won a state championship a couple years ago. Know him. Abbott and Gordon. I think the difference they played. Yeah, I think did Gordon knock Abbott off last year?
Yeah, they did.
So
This
year, I think Abbott's healthy. I mean, Sestala's healthy. Mason Hill's healthy, still healthy. I know Gordon's really good with the Reed boys. I watched them last year in the state championship game. I think this game might be a little closer than I know. Your computer had Abbott in a pick 'em, but what do you think about this one?
I think this is the 6-man football game of the year. This is the game we've been waiting for. This is wire to wire number 1 versus number 2 in 1A Division 1. And these two teams are combined 26-0. Of those 26 games, 25 have been decided by the 45-point mercy rule. The only game that wasn't was when Abbott opened the season with Oglesby and only beat them by like 22. Well, Oglesby's playing in the 1A Division 2 state semifinals right now. So, yeah, these are serious. These are, in my opinion, very clearly the two best teams in 6-man football this year. And they've been circling each other. It's a huge game. And you mentioned the star power in this game. Both these teams actually have great pedigree because you remember Gordon played the title game last year and won the title. The year before, Abbott, which was kind of young, and a lot of these guys were on that team. Paxton Pajovsky. They've got a ton of guys who are still on this team. First year head coach Kyle Crawford there at Abbott. They just built. If you haven't been through Abbott, they just built like a beautiful new field, like right off the highway. It's really, really nice. I lean towards Gordon for 2 reasons. One, I think they get the champion's advantage, and I think that just being the champion, that to me is worth a tiebreaker. The other thing is that Gordon is kind of closing in on what could be an historic defensive season. Gordon this season in 13 games has given up 48 points in 13 6-man football games. That is insane. Their defense has been relentless. I actually think this could be, I think this goes one of 2 ways. Either Gordon starts getting stops and it kind of spirals on Abbott and it turns into like, and it's one of those games it's like not indicative of how good the game was. It ends up being like 54-14 or something like that. And unfortunately, just because it kind of gets away from Abbott. Or this game is like in the 30s, like a real, for 6-man football, for those who don't know, a low scoring game that is like every yard is just a chore. Too great. I love this game. I'm in fact, I'm going to be locked into this game Saturday in Godly. This is terrific stuff. I like Gordon in a close one, but this, if you're not into 6-man football, this will get you into 6-man football. This is great, great football.
And that's a good thing. They get to go to a brand new stadium in Godly. That's just
gorgeous. If you haven't even seen, just Google. I think it's called The Wild, is what they call it in Godly. Unbelievable, unbelievable
studio in there, and just I passed by it when they were building it, and I was like, this thing's going to be huge.
Shocking, yeah.
Then when it's finished, you're like, that's a 6A stadium they just built in this little 4A town. But I guess they're expecting growth, so it's nice. Hey, man, we appreciate you hopping on. Thank you to L4 Media. Thank you to Ranch Masters. And, man, you've been on the show a couple of times in the past, so we really appreciate it.
Happy to do it, my friend.
Thank y'all.